Okay. All right, recording in progress, so we can call this work session to order this evening. And we'll begin, of course, with board and commission interviews, of which we have not.
Yes, we do.
So we do?
We do. He's coming on. It should be Rick.
Oh, Rick is here on the Zoom.
Or Old Orchard, Old Orchard, right?
Yes, Old Orchard.
Rick, can you hear us?
Yes, I can hear you. I'm sorry. Can you see me?
No,
No.
we can't see you yet.
Well, you're going to be disappointed. I'm sorry.
So Rick, we hear that you've applied for the Old Orchard Business District to represent Webster University.
Yes, ma'am, I did.
Can you tell us why you've applied for that and what you think you'll bring to the table?
So why I applied is I think the university, obviously, we have a vested interest in the district. But more importantly, I think we take an approach of a partnership, not only with the city, but our surrounding businesses. And I have a new role as of June 1st. You may remember that Ken Crehan was previously on the commission.
Yes.
On his retirement, I assumed some of his duties. So I now do public safety and facilities, facility management for the university.
Great. So is there anybody around the table that has a question for Rick? If not, we really thank you, Rick, at least, and now we see what you look like. We're looking forward to meeting you in person somewhere
Likewise.
along the way.
Yes.
And thank you for applying for this this commission. It's a good one and you should enjoy yourself.
I'm looking forward to it. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks very much. I'm assuming we're gonna. Okay, is there anything on the regular agenda that we need to discuss? If not, we're going to go to our meeting issues and updates, and we'll start here with our city attorney,
I have no updates, Mayor. Thank you.
Emerson.
Thank you, Mayor. There are two items I'd like to bring to the council's attention. On October the 1st, the PCEB commission is going to retire based on how the ordinance read right now. And I'd like for us to start looking at that ordinance bill early, so we don't be rushed to make a decision. If we can have a draft of the new ordinance, definitely I recommend we remove the sunset provision in there. And then the Alliance for Generational Dignity had submitted some proposed changes that we actually look at that. So we can have this particular piece of this bill done before the 1st of October.
And I'll respond to that because we had a conversation, the city manager and I had a conversation earlier about that. And we're hoping that if we have so much on the table, if we don't have the ability to have a really full-fledged discussion, bringing in the PCEB and the police and whatever, and to talk about this, at least in September, if we can change that date and get rid of that date and then have that conversation when we have the ability to have a really good, thorough conversation.
Okay, I have no problem with it, Mayor, just that I would like for that to happen in that sequence. Remove the
Yes.
sunset date and then keep
And then
that
have
deal and then have that discussion.
Yes, and that's exactly what we talked about doing, and we will do
Okay,
that. if
So I
that
think our
works.
next meeting is what, September the?
Yeah, and so, because we need 3 readings
Seven.
to change the ordinance, if we have the first reading, the first meeting in September to totally remove that expiration sunset date, and then we have the 3rd reading at the 2nd meeting in September, then we'll achieve that, and then we can continue to have a really good discussion about that.
That'll be great. I'd just like for that to continue on and
It will
in that
continue
sequence.
on.
May I ask, and the PCEB does understand that we want some feedback from them as well?
I think so.
Okay.
I would
just wanna make sure
imagine
that-
so.
That it ends up on their agenda in a timely fashion, so we hear from them as well.
It has been on their
Good.
agenda, so and there are minutes of the discussion that occurred with the PCEB, and so I would think you would want them to participate in a thorough discussion about that.
Well,
Mayor, council members, so it has been on their agenda, and they're on their, as their liaison. They have discussed it at length, and I thought they were gonna put forth some comments to the council. That has been some time, so I'm not sure why that hasn't happened. She heard us, I will be here later, so I can check in with them. We may have some additional updates, but I can reach out to them and ask if those comments are forthcoming.
Yes, which would be great, because if they're putting comments together collectively, I feel better rather than just inviting
Right.
one or two members in to talk.
Oh,
about it.
and I would have assumed that we would have the chair come in with the comments that the group has made.
Great.
So,
Right.
yeah, I don't think we're trying to avoid that at all.
Yeah, and I didn't mean to suggest that in any way.
And if we can, to share the recommendations from the Alliance Federation of Dignity with the council as well, so we can keep that ball rolling. Then my second item is, I'd like for us to go ahead and select a date for some strategic planning. I know we talked about it last meeting, and it was supposed to happen. Actually, we've been planning for strategic planning for 1.5 years now, and it hasn't happened. So if we can ask city manager to put out some dates that can be sent out through, what's that, doodle hole, yeah. So that we can have, I recommend that we try to do a Saturday where we're not rushed in the, before trying to get a meeting. And so that we can set some goals and objectives for the council.
And I think we'll wind that in with our discussion about Prop 1. Also, the city manager and Eric, Mr. Peterson and I had a rather long and lengthy discussion about planning processes, timing on that, winding it in with Prop 1. And so I think we'll share some of that discussion with you as we go along.
Okay,
Because, yeah, there is a need to do some
Yeah,
planning.
so that can be part of our strategic planning on what direction we're going to take on Prop 1 and things of that nature. So I'd like to get that on the agenda and a date set so that we can start that process. That's all I got.
Karen?
I have nothing.
I was at the old Webster Trade Association this morning. They had their first in-person meeting since, well, I can't remember when, but a long time ago, and we're very happy to see each other. There are a lot of events coming up, including, as you know, Jazz Fest. They're going forward as a Jazz Fest is going to happen. It sounds like that first week of September is sort of the drop dead date if they're going to decide not to for any reason. And then also Walktoberfest, and then the Holiday Open House. And so one of the things that did come up is they are working themselves a little bit on that coordination between Old Orchard and Old Webster. So it's good to see that that's gone over to the Trade Association as well. Yesterday was the Sustainability Commission meeting. They are working on a sustainability plan. We talked a little bit about, they have a survey, they want to do some public engagement, and Todd and I don't know if Todd's had a chance to talk to you yet, but this needs to actually, I think, be wrapped into all the other surveys we're doing so that there's a plan, so we're not overwhelming people with different kinds of public engagement. So the suggestion was that there'd be some planning with Jenny about how this all happens, and they're definitely open to that. They're composing a letter about Douglas Hill that will go to the Planning Commission, will be copied. And finally, moving forward on our bags, we're gonna, those reusable grocery bag grant that's been going on. It's
For 2
postponed,
years.
it's postponed, and so Todd's gonna put out the bid for that, and we're gonna actually start distributing some of those and maybe folding some of that into the public outreach for the sustainability plan. And I think that is it. There is an opening now on the Sustainability Commission as well, so another board commission slot to be filled. I think that's it for me.
Good. I'm glad about the bags. They spent a year talking about what kind of bag to get. So this is perfect. I'm
Well, it just
glad it's-
became we have no place to go and give them out problem,
Yes, yes,
and engage with the discussion about sustainability, so.
that's good.
So, thank you, Mayor. I had just a couple updates, and it dovetails into what Councilman Arnold was just saying. So happy, and Todd has shared quite a bit of sustainability plans and what they're doing. But there is survey fatigue, and that certainly is a thing. And so for me, and this doesn't have to be answered now, but this also folds into the strategic plan. You know, what are the priorities? When one of the commissions or boards gets interested in doing a survey, when does that come to the city or versus, you know, kind of ancillary? So just questions that we need to answer. How do we, you know, wrap all that in? What are the priorities? So I'm happy to help, and we have the capacity internally to be able to do a lot of that. It's just where do we put that work effort? So I will be looking forward to direction from the conversation tonight, and of course from that follow-up strategic planning. I think a retreat is a really good suggestion. Regardless of the day that happens, it does take several hours to at least dig into it and help give staff some direction. So appreciate that. Let's see. Oh, the other thing I'll say about strategic planning is it's certainly about council goals and how, you know, the direction the city takes. But it's also a piece that we need is we already are beginning on FY23 budgeting. So as we think about budgeting, how we hold that strategic plan. A big storm thank you. Mr. Ray is in back, I do believe. So a big thank you. You know, we had fire and EMS involved as well, and I don't want to shortchange them. We really thank the work they did. But the public works crews were out the evening of the storm. I believe, and correct me if I'm wrong, I think your team was out by 8:30, 8:45 that night on Thursday. They worked diligently throughout the storm, through the weekend. They're still doing cleanup, and you know, it's hard work. And so I hope the community recognizes that and all the extra time people are putting into it. And it's going to be ongoing. It's not just a couple of days. So they're getting to it. And hopefully we'll have some exciting information to share, whether we can offer some wood chips and some firewood. That we have lumber. we have lumber. So we're going to work out some things. The last thing I will mention, Mayor, is for your regular meeting, council will be discussing the COVID-19 policy. Happy to answer questions about that. I want to share that in between myself, Mr. Peterson, Julie Starkey, who's not here today, she's on a well-deserved staycation, so good for her. So we have received, is she here? Morning, Jenny. Amanda. We have received a lot of thanks and gratitude from staff who appreciate us going in this direction. And I want you all to know that because I recognize that you've received a letter too, perhaps you're receiving other comments. 85% of our full-time staff are vaccinated. They are appreciative of this direction. And kind of like we're seeing across the nation and certainly within St. Louis, there's a little bit of the fear, whatever word we want to point it with, of speaking up in support of vaccination or mask wearing, but they are Christian. I just want to keep that in mind. And there are two provisions within the policy: medical exemption and religious exemption for those employees fitting that category should they so choose to go through that process. We also know that we have quite a few part-time staff that are not vaccinated. I don't have those numbers off the top of my head, but we are making every route possible for people to have ease of vaccination. The fire department has taken the lead in helping set up some on-site COVID-19 vaccination clinics. We don't have dates for those yet. They are working with various entities to bring those in-house, if you will, and they will hopefully be available to family members as well. So I will keep you updated on that. Thank you, Mayor.
Thanks. Thank you. Eric, anything?
No, I will pass.
Thanks.
Yes, I wanted to tell you all about the Plan Commission meeting last week. They met a week ago Monday. There were two public hearings. The first was an application for a CUP for an automotive repair on Watson Road. The second was a continuation of the Douglas Hill public hearing. The meeting consisted of mostly staff review and analysis. So overall, the development plan is consistent with the comprehensive plan. The plan director conducted a review of the permitted, conditional, and accessory uses, meaning is a barber shop allowed? Is it, a tattoo parlor allowed or not allowed? Went through that chart. They also went through about a dozen categories and commented on those. Basically, whether they were complying with standards that were in the code, such as parking, stream buffer protection, tree preservation, etc. They made recommendations on practically every category. And then for those areas that were more visual or can't be quantified, they gave descriptive criteria for those, such as for the Architecture Review Board. There's going to be an additional special meeting. They're going to be meeting twice this month. Next on Tuesday, the 31st, and that's to hear public comments only. That is for first-time commenters, must be in person or on Zoom in order to comment. All other letters will be forwarded to the Plan Commission, and the department is doing a really good job of staying organized and keeping a chart of who's commented, and we'll forward those in plenty of time for the Plan Commission to read that before the August 31st meeting. And then the next regular meeting is on September 13th. That's what we got.
Thanks, Pam. Thanks for volunteering for that commission. Those are long hours that you guys are putting in.
Just a reminder that the school district goes back to school on Monday. For folks who aren't supposed to decide.
And happiness is right.
Thoughts and prayers, happiness.
All that
good
range.
stuff.
So relieved to be here, I will say that.
I have just a couple of things. Emerson brought up the PCEB, and so we're aware of that at this point. Last week I did the MML statewide planning, board planning, and a couple of things I wanted to share with you. Between the Missouri Municipal League and the St. Louis County Muni League, they are putting together a statewide use tax campaign for April. The materials that they're starting to develop look really good. And if this is something that we use statewide, there are statewide organizations like the Missouri Chamber of Commerce that'll get on board with everybody. And so we'll have a decision to make somewhere along the way about whether we put that back on the ballot in April. But the idea is that if we come with a lot of communities at one time with the same yard signs, the same messages, that might be a very successful way to go. The second thing I wanted to mention is that the MML, the Missouri Municipal League annual conference is in St. Louis this year. And I think Katie has forwarded that to all of you. That's a wonderful opportunity, not only to network with people around the state, but it's also an opportunity to learn a lot, because there are a couple of days of presentations and meetings and roundtable discussions. And because it's here at Union Station, it makes it very easy for us to participate in that. It's the last, I think it's the 26th is that last Sunday that it begins, and it goes through until Wednesday. And so you might take a look at the conference offerings and figure out if there's something in there that appeals to you, that you might want to participate in or come and join. And again, you know, I sent you all a note about the gas tax. That's really an incredible help for us in our budgeting, because we will end up with several $100,000, and you have to give credit to the leagues for that, and the Missouri Mayors United groups that have worked really hard to get that funding done. So I wanted to mention that too. All right. We're going to go on to, and let me know if you're going to the conference, because we can figure out some joint ways to do things there. So
Mayor, I apologize. If that's something that a majority of council decides they want to attend, we'll just need to notice that.
Nope, they can go because
They can
it's not a posted meeting, it's a conference, it's an educational.
Thank you, that's helpful to remember. And it looks, I did pull it up. Thank you for sending that information, or to 80%. It looks like some wonderful.
yeah, it's a really good opportunity. It's also a good opportunity if you need free pens and toothbrushes.
So make sure the exhibition hall is open.
Yeah, you go to the exhibition hall and fill up your bags. So anyhow, so we'll go on to our topics, and our first topic is the trees of distinction, and we welcome you.
Hi, thank you. Guys, I'm Carrie Coyne. I think I might have met some of you when I did my interview here in the neighborhood, possibly. But I'm a member of the Green Space Commission, and Pam is our.
You're the
council-
chair.
I'm the chair. The chair of the Green Space Commission, and I'm happy, I'm really excited. to
I
be-
suggest you come sit here. That will get
Okay.
the one easier.
I'm really excited to be here tonight because we've been talking about, okay. We've been talking about trees of distinction for a long time. You know, the commission awards the tree of distinction, at least one every year. And I have sad news because I just drove by the magnolia that we just awarded.
Oh,
And it's gone, it went down in that storm, so that's a little sad, but that makes me even more excited to be here tonight talking about this. We think it's pretty important. For those of you who don't know me, I just want to give you a smidgen of background. I'm a horticulturalist at heart, and I help manage the horticulture program at St. Louis Community College. I'm a certified arborist, and I'm also a landscape architect, so I have a really green background. So it's been fun working with the commission and putting that to good use for my community. This evening, I'm here about this Future Trees of Distinction initiative. And you guys know the Green Space Commission was established for the purpose of promoting high standards of long-term planning, maintenance, and beautification of public green spaces. And we hope that with the support of the city, we can move this effort forward to, bring that mission out. This is a pretty short program tonight. I know Pam's heard it a lot, several times. The commission put a lot of hard work into it. So I'll just go through it and then you guys can ask any questions you want at the end. So trees play a critical role in our lives and add considerable monetary value to our properties. And since I moved to Webster about 5 years ago, I've witnessed the loss of a lot of big trees just, on my block. I live on a pretty small block and we've had 9 large trees come down over the past 5 years. And as I've worked with the Green Space Commission, talked with my neighbors and everyone, I know this isn't an isolated problem. We just have some old trees in the community. There's diseases like Dutch elm disease that's taken a hit, and there's emerald ash borer is another issue, and just age of some of those trees, and then development, of course, is happening too, and a lot of trees are coming down due to development. And thankfully, the city has an ordinance which money goes into a tree fund for tree planting. So hopefully this initiative would take advantage of that. And our parks department, Scott and Yvonne have been doing a really great job of planting like crazy in the parks. So this initiative really focuses on public rights of way, not parks. On Make a Difference Day, I've been with a group of folks that have planted 250 trees in a couple hours. So there's not much more room in the parks for trees. So we think this framework I'm going to share tonight will be a great way to replenish a lot of those trees we're losing. So we have 3 sort of primary goals for this initiative. There have been a lot of studies. I could be preaching to the choir here, I'm not sure, but there have been a lot of studies about the value of trees in our neighborhoods. One study done by Kathleen Wolf says that mature yard trees can contribute 2 to 15% to home value. And tree canopy in neighborhoods has been found to increase value 6 to 9%. And tree retention in new development often claim to be expensive and hard to do. Yet parcels having mature trees are found to have up to 22% higher market value. So trees trees help the environment, they help with our utility bills, they help bring down, heat island effect, they help stormwater management, but they also bring something very valuable to our properties. So by increasing tree canopy and public rights of way, we can increase property values, and we can also improve storm infiltration, decrease maintenance and utility costs of things like streets. There's also been studies that trees help in public right of way. They can help public works departments pave less. They actually help pavement last longer. And there's a great website, treeswork.org, that I would suggest you guys go take a peek at, because it just drills down into a lot of those details. A second goal for the initiative is education focused. We'd like to educate the public about the value of trees. Kind of personally to them, but also to the community, to Webster and the community of man. We also want to share the best practices for planting trees and growing trees on when they're young, and then maintaining trees over a long time, because if they're not maintained properly, that can lead to some of the structural problems we've seen just recently. And finally, our third goal is to really make sure there's lots of trees of distinction in the future. We can award this right. This tree right here was our residential winner for the future trees of distinction. It's on Jackson, and that's an elm. Gorgeous tree. So this sort of is the process we're hoping to use. As a commission, we've been working on a framework for a planning process, because we know we need to have some planning in order for this initiative to be successful. And we really want to minimize long-term costs for tree maintenance down the road, because these will be, city trees. So we want to make sure that we're working with Public Works and making sure we're starting on the right foot, laying a good foundation. To date, preparation-wise, we've met with the folks from Kirkwood's 50 Trees program. I don't know if you are familiar with that, but they have a similar volunteer tree planting initiative. And Todd actually was part of that initiative, I think, when he was at Kirkwood. So that's a great resource for us. But we just talked with them about, like, what were your challenges? What were your successes? What would you have done differently? So we want to learn from that. I did meet with Todd, and Todd connected me with Andre Bueller, the arborist who leads the tree crew for Webster Grove. And I met with Andre this past week, and he's really interested in helping if this goes forward. So I was very excited about that. Moving forward, we'd like to form a working group, really a small, maybe a subgroup of the Green Space Commission to help plan this event, which would be an annual event. We want to work with Andre pretty closely to identify the best tree planting locations, because Public Works knows where utilities are, they know where easements are wider, they know about problem areas, they know where potential development might be happening. So we really want to make sure we're working closely with Public Works on the location of the trees. We also want to work on picking the right tree for the right place. If there's utilities there, we want to make sure that the city's comfortable with the trees we're specifying for that. Or if Andre knows of areas where the soil isn't as good or water conditions, we just want to make sure that we're working to pick the right tree. And the city does have a tree inventory, so it would be my dream as an arborist is always to look at an inventory and kind of look overall at the forest. What's the diversity in the forest, so that we don't create any more sort of Dutch elm disease problems or emerald ash borer problems where we have monoculture. So it'd be good to look at that with Andre as well. If necessary, we would like to partner with commercial or not-for-profit tree nursery to connect to grow tree species for this planting. A lot of times if you contract grow plant material, you can get something that might be a little bit larger, or if you get the species that you want, you're not like limited to what's out there for purchase. So you're kind of agreeing to buy these trees in advance, and they're usually a little less expensive as well. So that would be one of our goals. We want to engage individual homeowners, obviously, to be stewards of these trees. So, you know, if we get a 1-inch tree in the ground, we're going to need a steward for like 1 to 2 years. If it's a 2-inch tree, it's going to be 2 to 3 years. So we need real strong commitments from the people who are going to steward these trees and get them off on the right foot before public works then, you know, sort of take them over. And then we also want to engage some stewards, perhaps like myself, who maybe have a little more education about trees, but could maybe go inspect these trees on a fairly regular basis, just to have another set of eyes on the trees for helping Andre. And then as far as like implementation goes, we want to have obviously a big tree planting day, sort of a blitz. Hopefully we can find trees in one area or one neighborhood, or at least close to one another, where it makes it easier for logistical, like delivering mulch and delivering trees and things like that. So we need to really kind of focus on that. We're hoping we can use tree fund to provide the necessary materials. So that's something we would want approval on from you guys. And obviously on the day of planting or around that time, we coordinate with any applicable city, like the marketing department and public works, and we would be calling utilities to do locates for tree plantings, or Todd would, and we would assist with that. We would be requisitioning the plant material, delivering the materials to the sites, and then leading the planting that day with the volunteers, and then celebrating, of course, afterwards, right? And you guys do a great job of recognizing your volunteers, and I appreciate that. I'm one of them, and it's fun to be recognized that way. So that would be an important part of this. And then follow up, the last step there in the process would be really inspecting the trees and kind of documenting what we've done. And then we would like to hopefully just kind of have sort of a cyclical review process where we go back and we see what was a success, and our small working group could then tweak the system and move forward for the next planting. When I met with Todd and Scott and Yvonne, they said a lot of times the council has questions about schedule, and I said, well, we don't really have a schedule. But what I do know is that we really are thinking about, we would love to plant trees in fall of so next fall, 2022. We think that is a doable goal given the planting and perhaps you know, the contract growing of trees that would need to happen. So that's sort of where we want to land. So the rest of that schedule kind of parses out that way, but with approval from you guys tonight, if we could get it, or whenever we can get it, to start a working group, that would really be a first step. And then to work really closely with Andre to make sure that we're headed in the right direction. So just for information, that working group, we thought would be Andre, and he agreed to be part of that if we go ahead. A couple of people from the Green Space Commission. I'm hoping that somebody from the Sustainability Commission could be part of it.
Right.
Because we've had some great working opportunities with them. So I think they would be a really good asset. If there's other arborists in the city of Webster Groves that might want to lend their knowledge and passion. Most arborists are, like myself, kind of tree huggers. So, you know, to get those people who are passionate about trees once they're on that commission would be great. And then if we can get someone from maybe the Department of Conservation or Forest Relief, Missouri, I think it would be good to have someone from one of those professional organizations that's more public facing. Last, we were thinking of beyond that, so. That's really it. I really want to thank you all for letting me speak tonight. This is something I'm very passionate about, and I really appreciate being able to come on behalf of the Reusable Commission, and I appreciate Pam for guiding this discussion just a little bit, so we got here. So, do you have questions for me?
Well, so, great presentation, great schedule. So the tree funding, is that something that needs to be applied for and promised to this group, or?
I don't know what's in the tree fund these days. Eric may know how much money is in the tree fund.
What's our tree fund?
There should be a lot of money in that.
Yeah.
Should be a lot of money.
There should be a lot of money in that
So,
tree fund.
what we need to do with between Parks and Public Works is find where that money is at. We don't have a fund, as you look at our budget, and other broken out
Okay.
segregated funds called the tree fund. So if.
Yeah, because I never saw it. That's why I was wondering. I never saw it.
Departments have kept a log of that, a ledger of that fund. So we'll need to find that. I don't have that within the financials.
So yes, so what do we need to do to move?
Yeah, that's what what are we gonna?
Come on up, don't be shy.
And I can just interrupt really quick. I know Yvonne has used that tree fund for tree planting in the parks.
Yeah.
Um,
I do not know where it's at. Because it's the planning department. When development happens and they're gonna be taking down big trees, then they have value on them, then they have to give that money to the city. So Mara may know more about that fund and Yvonne than I would.
Could you empty your pockets, please?
I might have $1.
So is there any action from the
Laura's
council?
raising her hand.
Oh, Mara's raising her hand.
Oh,
Good eye, Sarah. Good eye.
I was expecting it, I guess.
oh.
It's like, I bet Mark can say. Hi, everyone. So there is quite a bit of money. I don't have an exact.
Thank you. All right, try it out.
Can you hear me now?
Yeah.
There is quite a bit of money in the tree fund at this point in time. The way the ordinance is written, it specifically says you have to use it for trees in public places. So in the right of way, in city parks. And so far, we hadn't had huge amounts of tree locations to be planting. So we had used it for replacements for, I think, trees in Old Webster and Old Orchard that had to be replaced. We've used it for a few other small things, but nothing really great at this point. And the money does kind of keep coming in as each new house is done and someone can't completely plant on site to cover the number of trees and inches they're supposed to plant. And so for each new house that isn't able to do it, they put $800 into the fund.
So Mara, are we talking about a fund that has $200 in it or $20,000 in it?
Probably more than $20,000 in it.
I think it's close to 40.
$40,000?
So-
Okay, yes.
Madam Mayor and members, this is not about the quality of the proposal. If you want to move in that direction, I would suggest that we break the tree fund out as a proprietary fund, like Old Webster Business District. and
Right,
such, so that
I
the
agree
revenue
with
be
you.
Clearly booked in the
Right.
right spot and not get commingled and used for another different purpose. If this is the intent.
So Mara, did you hear the presentation?
Yes, I did.
So was there anything that was stated that we need to make a modification to the ordinance of the bill to use those funds? I think you mentioned, in public places.
Right away is public places.
Yeah.
The ordinance simply gives, I don't think we'd have to make any changes. The ordinance just simply says that you can use it for trees in public areas. So streets, street trees, park trees. I think there's an ability to do a match with, for private locations. I'd want to look one more time. I know we looked at it when Yvonne and I were trying to figure out if we could use it for some replacement trees for the business district.
So for right now, would the council be in agreement that we move forward? We have them begin to put their committee together and we learn how much money there is and put it in its special fund. I also am curious about the public art fund, which is another fund that's sitting out there and how much is in that. But if the council would agree, I don't think we need any formal vote but can we just agree to send Carrie on
Yeah.
her way with a positive from the council?
Sure. Yes.
Yes.
And I did want to say this was a really good commission-wide effort. They spent months drafting the proposal and then putting together a whole document proposal and then doing a presentation for us. And so it really is, I'm very proud to have been able just to sit and listen for the last few months and really see how they're all coordinating and doing a lot of research and covering their bases on with things before they even put them down on paper. So great job.
I would like to tell you, I read the tree ordinance before tonight, but I had not. And I'm looking at it now, and I think that within the purview of what is here, the Green Space Planning Commission can do what they need to do in terms of the work group, forming the work group. We should put it in writing, and I would be happy to help you do that, construct what needs to be done there. And I think that you'll be in compliance with the ordinances at that point. Okay.
Great.
All right. Thank
you.
you.
Thank
you.
Thanks, Carrie. Good job. Tell everybody thank you.
We also define a tree in here
Get out of here.
as a woody plant typically growing as a single stem in an upright form that will attain a mature height of at least 15 feet.
Oh, okay. All right, we're moving on. HB 271, the new municipal election candidate filing dates. I think that's Miss Kate.
Yes, some of you may know in June, the governor signed into law new election candidate filing dates. And our charter, after discussion with our city attorney, does mandate that our elections are subject to oversight by the county election board and the state statutes. So the new filing dates for like the April 5th, 2022 election will begin on Tuesday, December 7th, 2021 at 8 a.m. And they will close on December 28th, 2021 at 5 p.m. So it is a little bit of reduction in time and an
Yes.
earlier filing date. So we will start advertising that when we get that on the public record.
So it goes from 5 weeks to 3 weeks. And again, it used to be the 16th Tuesday. Now it's the 17th Tuesday. So they expand it one way, but they shorten it on the other side. So we used to go from we would have been the December 14th to January the 18th. Now we finish on December the 28th. And of course, the holidays are right in there too. So. But we still publish and do, yes, that's right. But we still have to publish and do all that sort of thing and give notice. But
The time off before New Year's.
Are there still 100 signatures and everything else stays? in
everything else
place
stays the same.
except
That's
for
per the charter.
state?
It doesn't
Okay.
affect that at all.
All right, good enough. All right, thank you, Kate. Thank you. All right, now we're moving on to the Prop 1 election debrief and how we move forward in terms of housing goals and actions. And so I'm going to throw this open to you for your comments. I have my own thoughts about future moving ahead, and I will share those at some point.
Mayor, before we talk about the actual purpose, I guess, of Prop 1 or whatever it might be, I did send every council member, I think, you got it to email. One of my greatest concerns was our decision-making process. We gave the Planning Commission instruction of what we wanted done. They did produce it, and that work shouldn't go to waste. I mean, they did an excellent job, and that's what we have them there for. But my one critical question that I think we need to discuss is how do we adjust our decision-making process with the eye on balancing competing views on topics? And that's what this Prop 1 ended up being, the competing views. The mayor, David had one competing view, the rest of the council had one competing view. If we had started that process early in making decisions, we would have been able to hopefully come to some type of consensus on what was the mayor's issues or David's issues or what anybody's issues, so that when you get down to the point of making a vote for something, we're all in a working state of agreement. Unfortunately, Mayor, I think I mentioned this to you before. I didn't know really how you felt about Prop 1 until the night we were voting on Prop 1. And that's really too late to start really doing some strategic planning on Prop 1. To take care of whatever needs that you may or may not have, or the same thing with David. So the Planning Commission, I think, was like, what, 6, 7, 8 months working on this. So we had plenty of time to hash this thing out before we got to the point of yes and no on the council. I don't know if that's bringing information in as the Planning Commission is working on it to get an update, see where we're at. Well, I don't think it's not a good practice to take them through 7 months or 6 months of working on modifications, and then we are not in agreement with what they did. So what we're going to do with Prop 1, that's one thing, or what we're going to do with affordable housing. The Planning Commission worked on one segment of maybe that could help affordable housing. It wasn't the issue. It wasn't the all in all thing that was going to get us affordable housing. It was just cleaning up a bill that was 1956 with language that is no longer viable. So I'd like for us to get to a policy in place, make policy and get to a place where we're having open dialogue and then hashing out any issues we have before we get to yeses and nos on the vote.
So, but your expectation wouldn't be that we are unanimous every time we vote.
No, I think it's healthy for us sometimes not to agree, but although I said I'll never say it again, but I'll say it. Like the golf cart issue. I said no on the golf cart issue from day one. I still said no. I still worked with everybody else to make sure that there was a safety precautions in the golf cart bill. Then everybody's satisfied, but then I still voted no for it. But once the council voted, we do golf carts. So if we can't satisfy your issues that you might have with a specific bill or whatever, yeah, then that's vote no. But I think that's healthy. We can't always be on the same accord, but it can be a discussion that everybody can understand where you're coming from. Like I said, instead on the last night of making a decision.
I'm going to offer something out. You all can think I'm wet or something, but I think we need a good community discussion about housing. There is support out there for affordable housing. What is that? What does that mean? What's the data? What is affordable housing? We talk about advancing housing options. What are the options? If I had my druthers here, I would do a big community planning session around housing so that we can move forward in a way that is positive, that gets us additional housing that is acceptable to the community. And if I had my druthers, I would hire a company, a planning firm. I used some of our money to hire someone who began to put together some big community planning sessions so that we could build support in the community and go forward with the necessary housing changes that we think we need.
Mayor, I guess I have a question. I know we had a community open forum and planning session, I guess about 2.5 years ago now, November, this past November, 2019. And it was well attended. I think each council person was like the leader or liaison at the table to get everybody's feedback or specific questions. But that's all we did.
That's all we did.
Yeah,
That's
and
all.
so-
Survey as well.
And we
Yeah.
did a survey.
So
was
I
not-
guess what's going to be different about
And
having
wait a
another
minute, I
community?
will object to that's all we did, because then we spent several meetings coming up with the housing goals.
Right.
And one of the things that I believe is true about the Proposition 1 debate, whether people voted yes or no, it reinforced many of the goals that we identified in that document about concern about what does infill housing mean, concern about price point, concern about does that house fit the neighborhood, concern about can a senior downsize within our community. So although I believe our community didn't necessarily like, and I have thoughts on why, the vote turned out the way it did, but I don't think we need to rehash that here. The community rejected duplexes in the form that we presented it to them in that ordinance. They did not reject the goals that we as a council set for housing. So I kind of agree with both of you, if I'm able to straddle that at the moment, which is the Proposition 1 debate in some way shifted entirely the direction of our discussion about housing, because it so narrowed the focus on what we thought we're doing was one very small change that became a discussion that really wasn't about that ordinance. It was about people's fears for our community. And so I do agree with the mayor that we need some public engagement to refocus that conversation. I don't know that we need to engage an outside firm to do that. I mean, frankly, that's part of the reason I thought we hired Jenny, is so we can do some of that in-house. And that we can still work with the goals that we as a council defined to figure out a little more specifically and refocus our discussion of what are the policy alternatives that we have. We're going to get to the ARP funding, but that's an opportunity for us to do some things that we might not otherwise get to do. So it's, I think, a good time to sort of do both. Let's refocus what we defined and have that community engagement. And I trust that our planning staff understands the policy issues and ways to do it. And from talking to both Marie and Eric, they have some experience in this department. And so I worry about kicking the can further down the road. And I will, and this is sort of related but different, I also worry about starting off on a housing thing if we haven't done the more strategic planning overall, right? Because housing's got to be part of our overall umbrella of strategic planning.
Yep.
And so I think we as a council have to decide, do we take the bigger umbrella first and then look at that housing under that umbrella, or do we take housing as a separate entity?
I agree with you. I think you're right. And because I do think that what we don't have is a community vision of housing. We don't have, and that is something that could occur along with a broader strategic planning process where you get some community engagement, community input, and not just what we sit around the table and think, because in 6 months you could have a completely different council here. So it's really important to me that you get the community in one way, shape, or another, whether it's Jenny, Eric has experience in public engagement, but we get that community buy-in.
But I do think we have to be very careful about how we do that, because
I agree.
for a community like ours, if we have goals, again, I think Prop 1 reinforced or validated the goals that we have defined. The question then becomes, what are the practical policies that get us to meet those goals, and which of those will this community support? And so I don't want sort of this broad, sort of open-ended community discussion, because we are who we are, and we have limited choices available to us in terms of policy.
I feel like there was a little bit of accountability on educating ourselves, we had huge packets to go through that we went through. And I know some of the direction, when Mara presented it to us, she gave us several options, and I do distinctly remember. I can, I can go through some of these, we can clean up the residential code. Having already read all the material that she provided us, then she talked about it, and we were very clear about saying, this is what's happening. But I think we never, I think as a council, or did not keep up with the pace of what was going on. And I think I have the good fortune of sitting on the plan commission and reading things and going in over and over again, but I do think that there were holdouts until the very last minute of thoughts that didn't come up when they should have. And I feel like we need to be accountable for saying things and being, speaking as an educated person on whatever subject it is at the time, so that we can be informed when it comes to reviewing policy and things. I think it would have helped us as far as facing the community if we had been more up to speed as a council on what was going on. I started giving, I look back in my notes, I started giving updates on this in October, that this is what we were talking about. And so
And
I'm committed to continuing to do that on whatever commission I'm on, giving details so that you all know. And we need to maybe have more discourse in work sessions if something doesn't quite fly, or you're not putting the pieces together or whatever. And I will do the same, ask more questions.
And it's a good point, Pam. When you give your updates on what the planning commission is doing based on what we asked them to do, all right, we need to say, okay, they're going in the right direction. No, we need to go in this direction, so that we give them feedback. And that's what you're there for, to be the liaison to the council, to say, hey, this is what the council thinks and this is where we're going. So just that back and forth conversation, I guess, to the commission, to make sure everybody's on the same playing field.
Anybody else?
I do want to raise a separate but related issue. I think we need to have a formal policy about what city education campaign looks like and what position it should represent. Because that became a side issue here in ways that it shouldn't. And so I do think it's important that, because we'll have other things that go out for public vote. And, I think for us, when we send stuff for public vote, typically it's unanimous. So we don't face this. Not everybody voted in the same direction. But I mean, my expectation, as I said when we talked about this, is that once the council votes in favor of a policy, that's the city policy, whether it goes to referendum or not.
Right.
And I just want to be clear that, and from my perspective, individuals can say and do whatever they want to do. But we didn't, for the use tax, provide the other side. We didn't, for the firehouse, provide the other side. I doubt when we go out for the pool, we'll provide the other side. And so I mean, I may be able to be convinced that I'm wrong about this, but I do think that we need to more formalize, especially for staff who then get stuck in the middle. And we don't want to put staff in the middle of us being at odds about what the education campaign should look like.
Laura, can I speak to that for just one moment?
Of course.
Because it goes directly, of course, to what you all are saying. And there was lots of conversation that occurred both with Dr. Peoples, Eric, and with Jenny regarding where that is. And I've done a lot of research on this issue. And in my opinion, the seminal case on this is Rust versus Sullivan, which talks about government speech. And there were lots of people, and I had some very unpleasant conversations with some citizens who were calling saying you are suppressing speech on one side. In Russ versus Sullivan, which I don't want to get into the details of the case because it's an abortion case and that opens all sorts of questions. But basically, the idea here is that once there is a determination by a government entity to go down a path, and it is the formal position of that, you're not obligated to subsidize the other side of the voice. And basically what they use as an example is once you've taken the position to say no on drugs, you don't also have to say, but you can say yes on drugs too. So again, you don't have to do that. And we were in conformance with the Supreme Court's teaching on how to do this. And it's a tough question, but it was also completely appropriate in terms of how the law says we can go forward. And again, I recognize that not everybody will be satisfied with that because you're not going to like it if you thought that your position on it was suppressed or not spoken to. But again, that's one of the reasons why when I was asked about that by you as a counsel, I said, you can vote on it and you can make decisions as to what you're going to do. So again, from my perspective, you were completely in keeping with the law. Now, again, that doesn't mean that you can't make a decision to move down that path, but legally speaking, you were
I
on
just
all
want to
fours.
avoid, I mean, frankly, it distracts from the actual policy debate and becomes more about the machinations of the seven of us.
Right.
And if we have a policy in place, then it's consistent, whether I'm on the majority or the minority, I know what that is going to look like.
I mean, practically speaking, I can't think of one organization of any kind that talks, has a double message or goes both directions. You can't do it. It's just not. You've got to stay focused on the one message, and that's what the message is. Otherwise, we're not, and especially in this situation, we're not being leaders, and we're not being forthright with why we are here. Why am I sitting here if I'm going to do both? So.
And that's my reason to ask. I think we need that, create that process. So we make sure we take ourselves through that so we'll know exactly where each one of us stand and what's the next steps.
Well, if this conversation, I feel is sort of aimed at me.
No, not really,
No,
Mayor.
wait a minute,
No.
wait a minute.
It's
It's aimed a little bit at me, who asked one time when the vote was done about speaking. And you should know that I turned down so many offers to do videos in explaining my position on this issue, and I turned them all down. So I want you to know that.
Okay. But Mayor, the point I guess I'm trying to make is that if we had some type of process that we took ourselves through, we would have known your position on that particular issue months earlier. So either we try to work together and either come to some kind of consensus, or we know this is where you're standing with this situation and we just move on.
But you got where I stood and we moved on, and
Well, it was at the end of the process.
but you know, part of it was reinforced when we had all the petitions that came forward. We had petitions that came forward the night we had 89 comments.
I think what it would have helped me, Mayor, is to say, hey, I'm having pause on this situation. I have 89 comments from the community, so I'm changing my mind. We never said that.
And my goal is that we just don't end up in the same place we were with this particular proposition, that we have a clear policy so that we know what that looks like going forward. Because I do think our discussion about who would do what was a distraction from the actual substance of the debate, which is really the more important thing.
I'm sure there would have been more than one way to get to the overall conclusion that we was trying to get to.
Yeah, but Emerson, you and I are talking about two entirely different things. You're talking about a process that leads to, I think,
consensus.
More so agreement than not. And I'm with Sarah. We're not always going to agree, and that's okay. But I'm talking about simply the public education plan. So we as council members aren't fighting over what the content of that should be.
Okay, yes, that's two separate things.
Yeah.
And I'm with both of you. I think that as an organization, we have one message. And if we are creating policy, I think there, we got to make it work. And so we have to, there's got to be a back and forth on issues. I mean, so if there's, something that is not sticking with us, we have to ask the right questions and,
Yep.
say, whoa.
And all of it's geared to reaching the same collective goal. There's nothing personal, it's just.
Oh, no, because I voted the way I voted and I stayed out of it. You all did the messaging your way. I had nothing to do with that. I had nothing to do with
to
it. So
help-
you did your thing.
Well, to
I
help
mean,
me though, it would have been great for me to know your position early on in the process.
Okay, thank you.
May I take us back to sort of the overarching, and I'll just state my preference. I think everyone at this table knows that housing matters a lot to me, but I really do think that our first step has to be a broader discussion of the strategic plan. So that it fits in with whatever else
I
it
agree.
is that we're doing.
I agree.
Yeah, I'm with you. So maybe Marie, we should think about putting together some sort of retreat that we would work through some of the basics of planning and doing some visioning and that sort of thing, and finding ourselves a good facilitator to do that, someone from the outside to do that for us.
So Mayor, can I?
No, go ahead.
Well, do we really need an outside facilitator?
Well, from someone who did planning for 10 years, all right? I can tell you that you're much better off getting somebody from the outside who is not part of your organization as your facilitator. I could just, that's my opinion and that's my experience.
We actually hired on some excellent talent within the last 6 months here in City
Well,
Hall.
that's fine.
And I think we probably need to utilize that talent as much as possible.
I mean, I see for facilitating a meeting that we could go with someone who's more objective, I mean,
Yes.
am I going to be able to tell that person, you better write that down, or, I mean, just.
It is more objective.
Yeah, normally get a facilitator. They're trying to get all of us on one accord to make a decision.
But then from there on out, I think we definitely do have the talent, but I would think for our interaction, it might be helpful to have a third party.
If I could, Mayor, thank you. So we will start working on retreats. As I said, I'll send out some doodle dates. Hopefully we can find something that sticks. For a first crack at a retreat, I'm happy to do whatever direction council sets. But we can do, and I know we just talked about survey fatigue earlier, but we do have in-house expertise in this area. And we can get some of the anonymous, feedback that would feel better in terms of those priorities. We can start whittling it down. And keep in mind, your first retreat is not the strategic plan.
Right.
That really is culling the information down, seeing where those commonalities lie, what the outliers are. I'm imagining a retreat that we could do for 3-4 hours, perhaps a Saturday morning, and get some baseline groundwork doing. And so I would suggest then, if the council still feels that a facilitator or a professional in that area is needed, we can go that direction. But I think we could start laying some groundwork. And if you want me to go out and get a facilitator, I'm going to have to give them some groundwork of the direction I'm going. So I would suggest that you let me, work some of that piece, and whether it's we call it Jenny or Eric, we can get through a first retreat and get this moving would be my recommendation.
I'm fine with that.
I'm fine with that too.
Whatever, as long as we move along. All right, I think we've done this, which gets us to the American Rescue Plan funding. Ones.
Did you do this yesterday? Yesterday.
What's that? I'm sorry.
Did you put this together since
Yes.
the survey?
Yes.
I set mine at 4:55.
I don't think yours is gonna be-
That's fine.
There we go. All right, so.
I'm gonna be really impressed.
That's why I asked. Dang. You, Eric.
He is spoken for, ma'am.
All right, from the beginning. So the American Rescue Plan. Oh, sorry. yes, we didn't realize you'd run out.
Can I ask, where is David?
I don't know.
Oh, okay, just curious.
Or, you know, it's certainly council's pleasure if you'd like to move on.
No,
We should wait a minute.
yeah, we should.
So Mayor and members, on the American Rescue Plan, we are obviously moving forward on timeline issues and such. So this is meant to do a piecing together with the conversation we just had, a bit of our own little mini strategic plan starting about this as well. Because we have obviously a batch of funding that will soon be in the city coffers in Fund 44 that we will be asking you, how do you want to allocate, disperse, expend, and appropriate for the city's use? So I'm going to walk through this. We have $4.6 million coming inbound across two payments of 2.3 million roughly in two tranches as the federal government word is used. Our use of the funds must be for eligible costs.
Yeah.
Federally eligible. I want to be clear about that. Not our version, what the feds say, between March 3rd of 2021 and December 31 of 2024. That's the period that we can put the cost towards. All the money needs to be out of our accounts by 2 years later. So think of, I'll just use a capital project as an example. We could incur it for, putting public Wi-Fi in all the parks. We have to make sure that got done by 21, 26. So the costs are incurred, the encumbrance is there, the payouts have to be done by 2 years later. So that is the timeline of this program for this 4.6 million. These are the eligible uses. I said last week, we're going to talk about PowerPoint standards. You can blame the federal government for all the words. It's very hard to fit them all in one slide. But I'm going to walk through. Number one is the COVID public health emergency or its negative economic impacts. This is your general area where you're going to find people with unemployment issues, business closures, housing issues. This is the bucket that you can easily put things in if all your disbursements can be shown and proven to be about the COVID impact. Okay, can't just have a business closing and say we're going to come in and help if we can't prove that it's a COVID related impact to that business. Okay, so we need to just think about those strictures as you look through this. Number two, this is about workers performing essential work. We can provide premium pay both to our employers or employees or other employees if we wish to under bucket two. So the grants to eligible employers are to outside entities. Bucket three, number three on this, and for the public, this is the most flexible area of funding. This is what's called the revenue replacement fund. This is when we talked about in federal advocacy about direct and flexible aid in the ARP plan. This is what we meant. So we lost a bunch of revenue as local governments. It's an area that the federal government usually does not step in to help out on in great ways. Did not do it really in CARES other than in replacement of salaries. This is completely flexible given the formula that we have to run. I can tell you, I just ran it today using the government's estimate of 4.1% growth, the formula, they expect local governments to grow by 4.1% every year. Using that as a growth revenue, we need to check our numbers and see if we're going to be different. But we're just a shade over $2 million of 4.6 is our revenue replacement funds. So think of half the ARP money is really flexible. And this is where you can get to most of your types of ideas for expenditure is under this. Number four is infrastructure investments in water, sewer, or broadband. Very clearly in broadband, it's not just give people Wi-Fi. If we have good broadband, enhancing the access to it may not qualify. You really have to move the needle on broadband in your area to make that work. Sewer and water obviously very particular. This is not roads, this is not sidewalks, this is how you move sewage, gray water, or freshwater services. So those are the eligible uses. I asked you all about a 3-question survey. This is very small.
I just woke up when I saw
That's
that.
fine. So this is okay because we just want to start a conversation. I said, be a dreamer. Don't think about how much money we're getting. Don't think about what we are, the rules are. Where would we go? Where would you go as a council member? obviously small sample here, but we see things that rise to the top. See some homeowner repair, green improvement funding for homeowners, down payment assistance, funding for businesses, for green sustainable, small business micro grant funding. Things like that. We see some zeros as well. That's fine. This is not a decision. This was just a sampling to really draw out the conversation.
At some point, I do want to know what you meant by public local government, civic education.
Literally, it's
It's totally in my wheelhouse, but I didn't vote for it because I wasn't quite sure. what it
Yep.
meant.
So it's.
I voted for it, but not in time.
Literally, it was an idea, and some of the consultants have talked about this, that the lack of civics education, people don't know what their local government does. So do you put money into doing those? Some places are doing it. So
Got a 6-week course with.
this is what I wanted to draw you to. These are your free form comments. So I'm not gonna ask anyone to identify. Utility tax rebate, blue zones, digital divide, assisting to assist homeowners with high-speed internet, CLT. We've got, this one is, housing should not be just a windfall issue, but a central issue that is part of the mission core of the city. I wanted you to hear those comments from your colleagues as we go into this conversation. Current services. This was a great question that we asked for the simple fact of what do you think we're doing now that should be expanded upon? CDBG, community development block grants, appreciate that. We get that money's HUD money. We could add to it in a small period. Home repair. I thought the top was relatively on point. We have not a lot of programs to choose from, not a lot on this front. Maybe we need to do tree easement work. So just to give you a sense of what we have in the current portfolio, should we move on? And then this, I thought this number was going to be wildly different. This is your average 3 people, and I'll just tell you the common numbers here. This was the sliding scale between internal city infrastructure, external the community. I got a 40, a 50, and a 60. I thought I was going to get 20% internal, 80% external. That is the average across the response. That doesn't mean anything that's how it's going to be. But I asked us to think about, and I'll put on the table, and certainly Dr. Peoples and I have talked about this. This is one of the few times you get flexible money that you can put into local things in terms of your own infrastructure within City Hall, within your own workforce. So what do we do with that? Quick run through all that to go to next steps, because Marie and I, Neil, our directors, we can spend a long time and do a lot of energy digging into policies and putting together recommendations for you, but we don't want to put some costs into a program that is not anywhere on your radar or that you or the community don't want to see. So what are areas of interest that you want us to explore, to look at for these funds? What's off limits within those areas? We'll start to identify those. And then on community engagement, when and what tasks the community? Do you really want to call down the list before we go out there? Or do you want to go out there with the blank blackboard up in front of the group and all those different ways we do it? I asked all that, and then my final note, I'll just say, we'll take care of the compliance issues. That's easy. I mean, we're doing that already to get the money and such. We'll have compliance taken care of. We'll certainly give you all the reports. You shouldn't have to need to worry about that. We'll drill off in this off limits once we start to get to those programs that are really, this is where we want to go. How do we make them eligible within the federal guidance to accomplish the goals that you're trying to get? So I'll pause there. I'll turn to Dr. Peoples if there's anything to add, or this is where we want to really get from you. Where should we start this process of essentially doing a mini budget with ARP funds? And it does not need to be done now or next month. We have time, obviously, across that timeline, but we also need to build some programs potentially if we're going to expend those funds.
I think we just need a good discussion and get some good ideas from folks about places and where they might want to go with this. And once we do our planning, that'll tie into this also. But I think all of us sitting at the table probably have some ideas that may not have fit those categories about ways in which to use that money. So I'd like to kind of see us open this up to a broad discussion.
Absolutely. Happy to dedicate some time to it. We can plan some work session time for it.
Yes.
Because we can do the research. If you throw out the program, so council is interested in, we can do the research, we can bring back some ideas, but it is incredibly broad. I do want to comment on programs and services, and again, I've inserted that top comment, but we don't have many programs. We offer a service, the people are the services. Police, fire, our planning department, our public works department, taking care of the downed trees and doing all the wonderful work they do. But in terms of programs, we don't offer that. A lot of cities do. Many cities have some robust community type programs. If that is a direction that we're interested in, the one thing that I would say is it takes staff to run programs. Our staff are at capacity. So as you think about the neat programs, and please do, I love that when I saw, Eric's survey, the dream big or be a dreamer. That's right, we want to dream, and we want to dream for community and what is it we want to do. But we do have to have the accompanying staff to carry out those things. And while we have a couple years of this funding, which is terrific, what revenue replacement is going to be there to make it sustainable into the future? So those are some things I would ask you to think about.
But one question I have is, early on, we talked about with the county, with the state, partnerships that might leverage some of this. And I haven't really heard much more about that. Not necessarily from you, but even from reading about the county plans or the state plans, and the state in some ways almost seems semi-hostile to some of this money. So, I mean, I guess I bring it up just to say, I think I certainly would be open to opportunities. I'm not quite sure how and where we look for those opportunities.
I'm with you on that, because I keep hearing that at the state level, can we find ways to partner and use this money in a more productive way? I have two other comments. One is, have we asked our staff? I mean, some of the staff may have some ideas about programs or things that they've seen that they think that might be valuable for us to explore. I'd really love to be able to hear that. And the other thing is, and this is why I wanted us to just kind of talk a little bit, I think about things like the senior roundtable that desperately for years wanted to have a bus, some sort of transportation. It always showed up in every survey as the biggest need among seniors in this community is to have some sort of transportation. And, having those kinds of things surface, I'd like to just see us pull them all out.
In response to have we asked staff, absolutely. This was part of the FY 22 the budget questions that each of the staff people and the directors responded to.
Okay.
So they did, and the overwhelming response was technology, which we're doing and which council has approved. They're transitioning to Microsoft. Wi-Fi will be a discussion. Overwhelmingly, our staff, as well as our city attorney, remind me that we do not have Wi-Fi.
Yeah.
So, which is not just a benefit to staff, it's a benefit to anybody who uses our facilities, and we do Wi-Fi in the park. But so yes, staff have long been involved in the discussion.
Good, because they probably see all sorts of things that the community could use.
Can I go back to just a couple questions of, when we were doing the budget before, we said, we'll see about the ARP funds when we talked about not giving the cost of the performance raises. Is that a possibility to use it for that?
So when we look at the eligible uses, and for those watching, I'll go back to those. Number two, premium pay is very, very well defined in the federal guidelines and in the law here. We're really talking about a person, you have to show their nexus to the COVID response, a public health worker and an essential worker. That also would include the grocery store and laborers that had to continue during the times of lockdown. So you would capture a piece of our workforce, but not all of our workforce.
Okay, and then the other, I think we even talked about that as far as the the repairs to City Hall right now. Is that
So
something
there would be opportunity with, especially in number three, certainly the flexible opportunities for that repair to be utilized in that way. So that's
Okay.
revenue replacement. I will also point out, we do have the Kirkham sewer,
Yeah.
Elm, which could fall into number four, which that fund is going to take a large hit, not a sustainable hit, but a big hit to solve that problem. We could move that funding over, and that leaves, of course, our stormwater fund in a much more strong position. Or we could balance all those things. So there are opportunities within the current budget, current plans to move that funding over.
Does anybody else remember anything else that came up when we were talking about budget and going, ARP later?
I'll go back.
Yeah, well, we need to think about that. I mean, there are all kinds of things we could.
Our infrastructure is very
Surface.
important. I mean, we've really been
Yeah, I
agree
neglecting
with
it
you.
for quite a few years. And I was concerned that this last storm that we only lost a tree. You know,
Some of this also is the rules it's written. You know, there are opportunities for direct payment to those most impacted. And it's often, it seems to me it's defined. I saw it come up several times as a qualified census tract. Do we have any qualified census tracts?
We
Do we
do
know?
not have any in the city of Webster Groves. I will double check because they've also offered a different way to that same spot, but when it comes to qualified census tracts.
Okay, so maybe we don't have to do it now since we don't have
Yes.
any. At some point, you and I can have a conversation because I want to understand what that means and the implication for how some things might be set.
Certainly, and we can, you know, I'm not suggesting that we should blow through the world of risking federal compliance, but we can do some
Yeah.
things and, you know, obviously the federal guidelines, a few test cases will come that will clarify the areas that are on the edges, right? And they will come first and foremost from the big cities because their reporting structure is so much more onerous than ours. We file a once a year report on how we're using this. They're filing some monthlies and some of those for uses, some quarterlies on top of our yearly report. So we're gonna see the federal reaction, obviously, well before we have to start filing our reports on usage.
Yeah, the penalty is pretty tough.
The penalty is pretty
Penalty is very tough if you violate any of these things. So.
If we go back to the public engagement portion of this, I agree with Pam and the mayor, at least both have alluded to this, that we all have ideas. But you know, I was at the Old Webster Trade Association this morning and we were talking and I said, we're gonna have our first brief on this and we'll be talking about this over a period of time. The first thing somebody said was, well, we want a Saturday trolley that goes back and forth between Old Webster and Old Orchard because
good.
that would bring out more shoppers and they would connect them in the way.
Sure.
I would have never thought of that. The reason, and I'm not saying whether it's a good idea or bad idea in this forum, but on the one hand, I don't know that we just wide open say, hey, do you have any ideas whatsoever? But on the other hand, there are probably ideas in our community that we're not gonna generate, that might be really worthwhile. So is there, when we think about community engagement, is there, I know there's a way to get to sort of semi-structured, but isn't just rank order these 10 programs. And so that would be, you know, sort of my goal is that we do some of it early enough that we get some of those great ideas from this very smart, informed community.
Absolutely. And we, yes, I was just going to go there. The Business Development Commission agenda will include a conversation we've been talking about. We need to hear not only for ARP concerns, but also just regular city hall business, some of the business people concerns, right? With our own red tape, our permitting process or perceived perceptions therein. So the Business Development Commission is going to be talking about hosting a businessman's roundtable or business person's roundtable, really to bring folks in for breakfast, not us at city talking, us at city listening, as they, as the volunteer members, help to lead a conversation with businesses about what do we do, what can we do better, how can we improve process. Maybe it's not even a process improvement, and there's things that we are doing good. So.
You know, to that extent, one of the things that I've heard in all these sessions that I've been in where this is discussed is the tourism component keeps popping up there. And that's marketing, you know, and we can use funds for business marketing and tourism related things and without worried about whether or not that's approved. Okay, so we have appointments to boards and commissions. I can also tell you that at one of the meetings I was at, somebody had suggested that a sewer, you could actually build a road and then put a big circle around it and call it a sewer. And then you could use the infrastructure money.
Those are the kind of things that really we really don't want to be. that
Don't you
case.
like that? I mean, just put a big circle around your road and then you could use it for the road.
Put a hose to it.
Tonight, we have some boards and commission members to think about. Shall we appoint Rick Gurr to the Old Orchard Commission since we sort of told him he was coming?
Yes.
Yes, anybody oppose that? And the library board, we have a couple of, we have a vacancy and Megan Haynes and Anita Radcliffe have applied for that vacancy. And Katie, I think Anita's applied before, hasn't she?
Yes, Megan also, they both interviewed
Twice.
Yeah.
And so I thought it's so inclined that you wanted to appoint one and maybe make the next appointment one or the other or something like that, if his own time. This was their second round.
I
They're
know,
very interested.
can we do that with Anita? Let's appoint her if you would all agree, and then Megan as the next person in line. Is that okay with you? She's
Yes.
showing the most interest. Okay, we'll do that. And then we'll tell Megan that she's
The next appointment.
what next appointment. And we see that Dee Dee Dooley has resigned from the Historic Preservation Commission. I think we just appointed her, didn't we? Not too long ago. I remember interviewing her.
And I think her letter said a change in her
Yes.
availability in the evening.
Yeah.
that
And-
necessary.
And Tessa Wasserman is not seeking reappointment. Boy, she's gonna be a big loss.
Can we put her on that working group?
She
Yeah, I bet
is,
she maybe.
she has been such an important part of leadership of the Green Space Committee. So,
Absolutely.
okay, I guess that's it. We'll take a break or whatever and head in.
All right.
It's actually 13 to the.
Hey, I think we have everyone here this evening, and so we're going to begin by calling this meeting to order. And again, I remind those of you who are here virtually on Zoom that you can use the raise your hand option, and during the remarks of visitors, and we can call on you at this point. Email comments will no longer be read aloud at the meeting, and all speakers, both in person and via Zoom, will be allowed 3 minutes. And due to the ongoing pandemic, masks will be required by all regardless of vaccination status. Before I ask for the roll call, I have to tell you that I approached this meeting tonight with a real sadness about what's going on in the world today. And all I can think about are those folks who are in Afghanistan now, the women and the children who are just stuck, and the folks who are in Haiti. And if this were not a public meeting, I'd be offering a prayer for people in both of those countries. So I just keep them in your thoughts, and keep them in your prayers, and hopefully the world will improve. So we'll begin with the roll call.
Yes, Mayor. Mayor Welsh.
Here.
Councilmember Arnold.
Here.
Councilmember Bliss. Here. Councilmember Franklin is absent. Councilmember Smith.
Here.
Councilmember Alexander.
Here.
Councilmember Richardson.
Here.
All right, we begin with remarks of visitors, and we have a speaker card from our own Dave Puck.
First of all, Mayor, thank you for your comment. It's very appropriate and timely, obviously. And I want to thank you for letting me sit in on your work session. They're actually much more interesting than these sessions to me, so I like being in there. I actually wrote this before I came to the work session, but it dovetails nicely into what you all talked about, which is what it's for whatever it's worth. I think that there is a bigger issue than just housing or housing vision. For in the time where I have spent living here, which is 21 years, it seems that Webster Groves is at a major crossroads in defining what kind of city it wants to be in the future. This to me is a huge question. It may be your biggest question when you look ahead into the future. All the things you're talking about fit into it, but what kind of city do we want Webster Groves to be in the future? As such, I think it is essential that Webster Groves creates a vision statement for the city. The city has had a long-standing mission statement, but has never, to my knowledge, had a vision statement that I'm aware of. A vision to me is simply defined as a picture of a desired future state. It is a fundamental element of any strategic plan, and if it's left out, the plan is incomplete. Your vision is your big hope, your big dream, your guiding light. For example, I've surveyed some of my friends and neighbors in town. Here are 4 visions. Number 1, don't change anything. We're happy. Don't change this, don't change anything. And you're seeing that play out in elections. 2, evolve to an upper middle class and upper class city featuring our historic tree-lined beautiful neighborhoods and single family homes like Webster Park, Sherwood, et cetera, et cetera. 3, evolve the city that is open, welcoming, and fully embraces diversity, equity, inclusion, and affordability for all people at all income and housing levels. And finally, to become the preeminent small town creative community and city of the arts in the Midwest, if not in the nation. In other words, if you create it, they will come. Those are 4 roads that have diverged in the wood, and you can take the road less traveled by, and it will make all the difference. So what will your road be? What do you see at the end of the road? How clear is your vision? This, to me, as a 21-year resident, is the single biggest question City Council faces. What kind of city do we want to create for the future? I hope this is the start. Thanks.
Thank you, Dave. Thanks.
Dave, it's impressive that you figured out how to do 3 minutes exactly.
On the nose.
All right. Is there anybody who has a hand up, Katie? No? Okay, so with no hands up, we can move on. We have no new business. We can move on to unfinished business, and we start with Councilwoman Richardson in 9154.
Yes, Mayor, I'd like to call for the third and final reading of Bill number 9154 and its subsequent adoption.
Second. Bill 9154, third and final reading. An ordinance amending Chapter 53, the zoning code of Webster Groves, by amending the use and dimensional regulations for multiple family dwellings in the C, C1, and D commercial districts in sections 53.110 through 53.143, and section 53.159, and amending attached garage regulations in section 53.203, and additional minimum street setbacks in section 53.205 and matters related thereto.
Are there any questions or issues? Hearing none, we'll call for the vote.
Councilmember Arnold,
Yes.
Councilmember Bliss. Yes. Councilmember Smith,
Yes.
Councilmember Alexander, Councilmember Richardson.
Yes.
Mayor Welch.
Yes, okay, 9154 has passed, and we will move on to 9156. Councilmember Emerson, please. Or
Yes, Mayor, I'd
Smith.
like to call for the first and second reading of Bill 9156.
Second.
Bill 9156, first reading. An ordinance amending Chapter 60, Article 16, Section 60.996, Schedule M of the Code of Webster Groves. Left turns prohibited, to prohibit left turns onto southbound South Elm from westbound Ambrose Way from 8 a.m. to 9 a.m. on school days.
Any questions or issues? Hearing
I have
none?
a question, I guess.
Yes.
Is that okay?
Yes, please.
I was just curious why it's only in the morning. If, like, is there not an issue in the afternoon? We know.
Perhaps the police chief would know that. Chief Curtis, can you come up and tell us why you chose only 1 hour?
We didn't choose it. It was basically from the school district, from their history of observation. It's the morning rush that causes the problem coming out of there. They said in the afternoons, they've had no problems with it.
Okay, just curious. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Thank you very much. Anything else? Anybody else have a question or comment? If not, let's have that second reading.
Bill 9156, second reading. An ordinance amending Chapter 60, Article 16, Section 60.996, Schedule M of the Code of Webster Groves, left turns prohibited. To prohibit left turns onto southbound South Elm from westbound Ambrose Way from 8 a.m. to 9 a.m. on school days.
Right, we're next at the consent agenda, and does anyone care to remove anything from the consent agenda and deal with it separately? Because I'd like to talk about Resolution 2144 separately. That's all right. And I just have one question about the concessions at the recreation complex. Can you explain that, Dr. Peoples? It's the $70,000 to buy inventory.
I can actually, and I'm gonna, go ahead, please.
So, Madam Mayor and members, the budget for FY22 was generated with the COVID-19 numbers from last year as well. And then in talking with Director Davis, when he entered his budget line item for the concessions, only was meant to put in 25,000, forgot to press the 2. So the budget that was presented and adopted only gives him $5,000 of expenditure authority for concession supplies, which obviously is not sufficient to meet the need, as we have seen people flock. And it's been one of our best performing revenue line items this year is the concessions in the aquatic center. So we need to give him an expenditure authority. That's what this budget resolution does.
All right, so we can talk about resolution 2021-44. We can do the approval of the consent agenda first. Let's do the resolution.
Would you like me to read it, Mayor?
Yes, please.
Resolution 2021-44, amending personnel policy 6.14 to replace current policy with a new policy requiring COVID vaccination for all employees with limited exception and authorizing other public health mitigation measures.
Know that you wanted to say something, Councilwoman on that.
Yes, so I am uncomfortable. The resolution exempts us as a council from the vaccination requirement. I'm uncomfortable doing that. Having consulted with the city attorney, I do understand why it's in there. We can't have the city manager tell us what to do because the voters of Webster Groves tell us what to do. While I don't expect anyone else to do, I just did want to publicly say to our employees that I'm not asking you to do anything that I haven't done. I am fully vaccinated. I intend to continue to comply with health requests, including boosters if they become available. But do understand that legally we can't make ourselves subject to this. Although I'm, it sounds bad asking staff to do it when we're not required to do it in the same way.
I agree with Laura. Well, at least I will do my best to satisfy the requirements the city put in place here at City Hall. I'll follow those guidelines.
Well, I have to tell you that this policy really made me wrestle with it. It's a good policy. It's important for the pandemic. But what I wrestled with is that we may lose some staff. And I don't know how many staff we might lose. And I am concerned about that, particularly with staff members who've spent the last year and a half masking and being careful and social distancing. And now they may choose to leave or they may be terminated if they don't follow this policy. And it really has me concerned. I checked with a lot of my fellow mayors in other cities and I can't find anybody else who's done this. So you may have other cities that have done this, but it is of concern to me. So I will just publicly state that I am worried about the loss of employees as a result of this measure.
So thank you, Mayor. I too am concerned about that. I certainly do not want to lose any staff. And as I have shared with council before, of our full-time staff, 85% are vaccinated. As of 2 days, we have not had any unvaccinated employees share their direct intention to exit the city. Matters to be, if somebody had, who would have been confidential, but I can share with you that has not come up to date as a result of the policy. All staff have had an opportunity to view the policy. We had a town hall with all staff or any staff that wanted to attend so that they could express their concerns regarding it. In terms of other cities, I have put it out there to my fellow city managers across the state. I have not come across any other cities that have yet implemented it. I've come across a lot of cities that are talking about it and are in the plans. As a matter of fact, we have shared our draft policy out with others, so we will not be alone. As in every day, there's a new headline about whether it's school districts, universities, businesses, both public and private. I think we saw our first school district here in the greater St. Louis area this week come out with mandated vaccines. So I too wish we were not at this point in place of having to require people if they are able to do the right thing. But unfortunately, we are in the midst of a global pandemic that we are not seeing slow down. And I do believe that it's equal to our priority of caring for each other in terms of employees. It's taking care of our community. And we have a staff that interfaces with the community on a daily basis. And I think our community members, by and large, expect our staff to be vaccinated. So I
I wish this were easier, and I hope we do not lose employees.
Yes, I'm with you on that. I hope we don't lose any employees either, and I hope that we make every effort to deal with those who are applying for a religious or a medical, whatever we call that, release from the policy. But I understand it. I just wanted to go on the record as saying that this has really been a tough one for me.
May I ask a question? And I'm sorry I didn't ask you about this earlier, Marie, but is a leave of absence an option for non-compliance?
Well, it's not. So there are two exemptions that are out there. And part of the reason why a leave of absence is not a third exemption is because the pandemic isn't going away. The virus isn't going away. Our ability to deal with the virus is what we're attempting to deal with. So if you simply said, I'm not going to take the vaccine, but I'm not going to work for 6 weeks, everyone else get it, and then I'll come back, it's still out there. You'll still get it at some point. So in terms of what the courts have recognized as an exemption, that's simply not one of them. Does that make sense?
Also add to that, the difficulty with the leave of absence, aside from the aspects that the city attorney shared, which are certainly all true, is that we still have work to do. And so in terms of giving a leave of absence, you know, if it were a planner, if it were a police officer, if it were a firefighter, I don't know how we would continue to carry on if we were granting the leave of absence. So my goal is to be as compassionate as possible. We have the medical exemption, we have the religious exemption. People need to work with human resources and go through that process if they indeed have a, you know, a validated, whether it's religious or medical exemption. But, you know, the sad fact is we're seeing across the nation and in our state, people are making the choice not to get vaccinated. And I hope that is not any of our employees. As I said, I do not want to lose any of them, and we'll do everything we can to work with them, but it's short of a leave of absence. I don't see how we could do that and manage the workload and meet community needs. But thank you for asking.
All right, I think we can vote on that separately.
Somebody want to make a motion just on that resolution?
I would like to call for the adoption of resolution 2021-44.
Second,
Councilmember Bliss,
yes.
Councilmember Smith,
Yes.
Councilmember Alexander,
Yes.
Councilmember Richardson,
Yes.
Mayor Welsh,
Reluctantly, yes.
Councilmember Arnold.
Yes.
All right, could someone, I guess it's Councilwoman Bliss, could you call for the rest of the approval of the consent agenda?
Yes, Mayor, I'd like to call for the approval of the consent agenda and its subsequent adoption.
Second.
Councilmember Smith,
Yes.
Councilmember Alexander,
Yes.
Councilmember Richardson,
Yes.
Mayor Welsh,
Yes.
Councilmember Arnold,
Yes.
Councilmember Bliss.
Yes.
All right. We have made some appointments tonight to boards and commissions. We have appointed Rick Gerger to the Old Orchard Special Business District. We've appointed Anita Radcliffe to the Library Board and Megan Haynes to the next opening on the Library Board. And with that, I believe we do have an executive closed session, correct, Mr. City Attorney? And what
Yes,
is
ma'am.
it for?
1 and 3.
Madam Mayor, briefly, could I ask, once we move to that, can we go back in the other room for closed session? We do need to Zoom somebody in, and rather than use the big sound system. it would be
Yes,
better
we
to
can
use
go
that one.
back to the club. Yes, okay, 1 and 3.
Yes, Mayor, I'd like to call for an executive closed session regarding number 1, attorney-client privilege communications, Missouri statute 610.021, open paren 1, close paren. And number 3, personnel, Missouri statute 610.021, open paren 3, close paren.
Second,
Councilmember Alexander,
yes.
Councilmember Richardson,
Yes.
Mayor Welsh,
Yes.
Councilmember Arnold,
Yes.
Councilmember Bliss,
Yes.
Councilmember Smith.
Yes.
Okay. And thank you, and we're going into closed session.